The crystalline spires of New Haven cast long shadows across the violet snow as the last evacuation ships departed. Kira Verel stood alone on the observation platform, her silver eyes reflecting the trails of ionic exhaust that marked her people's exodus. The wind carried the bitter scent of mineral decay, another sign that Helios 7 was dying. She pressed her hand against the transparent barrier, counting the ships until they disappeared into the lavender sky. 312 vessels, carrying nearly 1,000,000 Heliosians to their new home. All except her. Genetic anomaly, they had called it. Her enhanced engineering abilities came at the cost of a metabolic instability that the Council deemed too risky for the colony ship's limited medical facilities. They claimed it was mercy, leaving her with a year's worth of supplies and the chance to live out her remaining time in familiar surroundings rather than dying in transit. Kira knew better. They feared her differences would contaminate their carefully curated genetic pool. The observation platform's environmental systems whirred to a stop, the first of many automated shutdowns that would sweep through the abandoned city. Kira pulled her thermal cloak tighter and headed for the maintenance tunnels where she had established her shelter. At least her affliction had taught her to survive with minimal resources. 3 months passed. Kira maintained her sanity by continuing her work, using the city's remaining power to run simulations on planetary restoration. It was pointless now, but the complex calculations kept her mind sharp. She had just begun another series of tests when the sky exploded. The sound came first, a thunderous roar that shook dust from the tunnel ceiling. Then a blinding flash lit up the eternal twilight of Helios 7. Kira rushed to the surface, her heart pounding. Through the swirling snow, she saw it, a ship unlike anything her people had built, its hull scorched and smoking as it plowed through the permafrost before coming to rest against one of the city's defunct atmospheric processors. For long moments, she stood frozen, her mind racing. The ship's design was clearly alien, possibly human, based on the scattered transmissions she had intercepted over the years. But what were they doing this far from their normal trade routes? A hatch burst open with a hiss of escaping atmosphere. Dark figures emerged, stumbling in the heavy gravity. Their environmental suits were damaged, venting precious heat into the killing cold of Helios VII's perpetual winter. Without help, they would freeze within hours. Kira's hands clenched. She should hide. These aliens could be dangerous. But as she watched them struggling to establish emergency shelter, she remembered the pain of being abandoned to die alone. With a curse that would have shocked her former colleagues, she grabbed her emergency medical kit and engineering tools. "Stop," she called out in universal trade, emerging from her hiding place with her hands raised. "Your suits are failing. You need proper shelter." The aliens spun to face her, weapons raised. One stepped forward, clearly their leader based on the other's defensive positioning around her. The faceplate of her damaged suit revealed coffee-colored skin and eyes like polished obsidian. "I'm Captain Maya Torres of the Earth Science vessel Horizon," the leader said, her voice steady despite the violent shivering Kira could detect. "We've sustained heavy damage. Our ship will be useless until we get you somewhere warm," Kira interrupted. "There's a medical facility 2 levels down with functional environmental systems. We can assess your situation once hypothermia isn't imminent." Captain Torres studied her for several heartbeats before nodding sharply. "Lead the way. But understand any hostile action and we will defend ourselves." "Noted," Kira said dryly. "Though killing your only chance at survival would be illogical." She led the group, 6 humans in total, through the winding maintenance tunnels to her modified medical bay. As emergency power hummed to life and blessed warmth began to fill the chamber, Kira saw relief flood their faces as they removed their helmets. "You're alone here?" Torres asked, helping a younger crew member onto one of the diagnostic beds. "My people evacuated 3 months ago," Kira replied, activating the medical scanners. "The planet is dying. They left me behind because I'm defective." Defective? This from a tall human with silver-streaked hair and intense green eyes. You seem pretty capable to me. Kira's bitter laugh echoed in the sterile chamber. I'm too capable, actually. A genetic quirk makes me better at understanding complex systems, mechanical, biological, doesn't matter. But it comes with complications they decided were too risky for their precious new colony. She turned to face them fully, letting them see the silvery markings that spiraled across her skin, the visible sign of her affliction. So yes, I'm alone. And you're in trouble. Your ship's power core is destabilizing, I can see the radiation patterns from here. We have maybe 48 hours before it goes critical. So, humans, shall we discuss how we're going to keep each other alive? Torres exchanged looks with her crew before facing Kira again. A slow smile spread across her face. I think this could be the beginning of a very interesting partnership. The medical bay's soft blue lighting cast strange shadows as Kira worked. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface while Lieutenant James Rodriguez, the Horizon's chief engineer, watched in amazement. The complex equations and system diagnostics she manipulated seemed to flow like water under her touch. Your ship's quantum core is unique, she said, eyes never leaving the display. The crystalline matrix is similar to our old planetary stabilizers, but you've modified it for propulsion. Brilliant, really. Dangerous, but brilliant. Rodriguez leaned closer, his weathered face reflecting the holographic glow. Can you stabilize it? Maybe. Kira's silver markings pulsed faintly as she concentrated. But I'll need access to components from the old city's power grid. Some of the synthetic crystals should be compatible. Captain Torres, who had been conferring with her medical officer Dr. Kai Chen, joined them. How dangerous would salvaging these components be? The environmental readings we took before crash landing were concerning. Kira's lips twisted in a grimace. The planetary degradation is accelerating. The surface temperature drops about 2 degrees every week, and the atmospheric composition becomes more toxic by the day. That's why my people left. She paused, adding quietly, well, one of the reasons. Yet you survived out here alone, Torres observed. There was no pity in her voice, only respect. I adapted. Kira gestured to her silver markings. My defect allows me to process environmental changes faster than normal Heliosians. I can filter toxins more efficiently, regulate my body temperature better. Ironic that the very thing they feared might save all of your lives. The youngest crew member, Communications Officer Zara Patel, spoke up from her medical bed. I still don't understand how they could just leave you behind. It's barbaric. My people value genetic purity above all else, Kira explained, her voice carefully neutral. They believe it's the key to our species' survival. Any deviation is seen as a threat to the greater good. She turned back to her calculations. We should focus on the task at hand. The power core won't stabilize itself. Torres nodded decisively. Rodriguez, you and Dr. Chen help Kira gather whatever she needs. Walker, Hassan, secure our emergency supplies from the ship. Patel, monitor any communications channels. If there are other ships in the system, we need to know. As the humans dispersed to their tasks, Kira felt a strange warmth in her chest. It had been so long since she'd worked with others, since anyone had valued her input. The feeling was unsettling. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of activity. Kira led Rodriguez and Chen through the abandoned city's power stations, salvaging crucial components. The humans proved remarkably adaptable, quickly learning to navigate the alien architecture and technology. These systems, Rodriguez marveled as they extracted another crystal array. The integration of organic and mechanical elements is incredible. With technology like this, why would your planet be dying in the first place? Kira hesitated before answering. Our civilization grew too quickly, demanded too much from the planetary core. By the time we realized the damage we'd done, it was too late. The council decided evacuation was the only option. But you were working on restoration projects, Chen interjected, carefully packing the crystals. I saw the simulations in your lab. Couldn't they have at least tried? The council felt the resources required for restoration would be better spent on establishing a new colony. Kira's voice was bitter. They preferred to abandon their home rather than admit their mistakes and try to fix them. A distant rumble interrupted their conversation. The floor trembled beneath their feet, and dust rained from the ceiling. Kira's eyes widened in alarm. We need to move. Now. They barely made it back to the corridor when the power station's ceiling collapsed behind them. As they caught their breath in the safety of the maintenance tunnel, Rodriguez placed a hand on Kira's shoulder. You saved our lives back there. How did you know? I felt the vibration pattern change. She touched her markings. Another defect, enhanced sensory processing. The structural integrity was failing faster than normal. Chen's medical tricorder whirred as he scanned her. These genetic modifications, they're not random mutations, are they? They seem too perfectly adapted to survival on a failing world. Kira met his gaze steadily. No, they're not random. I was part of a research program studying accelerated evolution. The goal was to help our people adapt to changing planetary conditions naturally, rather than relying solely on technology. But when the first subjects began showing signs of success, the council shut everything down. They claimed we were corrupting the species. They were afraid, Torres said, having arrived with the rest of the crew to check on them. Afraid of change, afraid of admitting their way wasn't the only way. And now they're gone, Kira replied softly. Along with any hope of saving this world. Torres studied the collapsed power station thoughtfully. Maybe not. Your research, your abilities, they prove adaptation is possible. And now you have access to human technology and expertise. What are you suggesting, Captain? Kira asked, a spark of something dangerous like hope flickering in her chest. I'm suggesting that sometimes the people left behind are exactly the ones needed to forge a new path forward. Torres smiled. But first, let's save my ship. Then we can talk about saving your world. As they made their way back to the medical bay with their salvaged components, Kira found herself re-evaluating everything she'd accepted as truth. Her people had seen her differences as a fatal flaw, but these humans saw them as valuable assets. They didn't reject her abilities, they embraced them. For the first time since watching the evacuation ships disappear into the violet sky, Kira allowed herself to imagine a future different from the lonely death she'd been promised. Perhaps being left behind wasn't an ending after all, but a beginning she'd never expected. The ship's quantum core hummed with renewed stability, its crystalline matrix now integrated with salvaged Heliosian technology. But Kira's attention was elsewhere. Something in the power readings had caught her eye, a pattern she'd never noticed before. This is impossible, she muttered, recalibrating her scanners. The silver markings on her skin pulsed with increased frequency as she processed the data. Torres looked up from her status report. Problem? Not exactly. Kira's fingers danced across the holographic interface. When we integrated your quantum core with our systems, it created a resonance pattern. It's revealing energy signatures I've never seen before, old signatures, buried deep in the city's infrastructure. Rodriguez joined them, his engineering expertise peaked. How old are we talking about? Predating our earliest records, Kira breathed. These systems, they're not Heliosian technology. They're something else entirely. The discovery sparked a frenzy of activity. While Chen and Walker continued stabilizing the ship's systems, Kira led Torres, Rodriguez, and Hassan through the deepest levels of the abandoned city. Her enhanced senses guided them through deteriorating maintenance tunnels until they reached a sealed chamber that shouldn't have existed. The metal composition is unlike anything in our database, Hassan observed, scanning the door. No obvious entry mechanism. Kira stepped forward, her markings glowing brighter. There is one. But it's not mechanical. She pressed her hand against the ancient surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, responding to some unseen signal, the door dissolved into streams of flowing energy. Biological interface technology, Rodriguez whispered in awe. Your genetic modifications were based on something far older than we realized, Kira finished, staring into the revealed chamber. My people didn't create these adaptations. They rediscovered them. The room beyond was vast, its walls covered in crystalline formations that pulsed with dim light. At its center stood a pillar of what appeared to be living metal, covered in symbols that shifted and changed as they watched. Holographic displays sprang to life around them, showing images of Helios 7 from thousands of years ago, a world of lush forests and crystalline cities. This is a planetary restoration facility, Kira said, her voice filled with wonder as she interpreted the ancient data. The original inhabitants, they didn't just terraform worlds, they merged with them. Their technology was biological, evolutionary. They developed ways to adapt themselves to dying planets and then heal them from within. Torres studied the displays intently. What happened to them? According to these records, they didn't die out. They evolved. Became something beyond physical form. Kira's hands trembled as she accessed more data. My people, we must have found this facility generations ago. The research program I was part of wasn't creating something new, it was trying to recreate what was lost. And instead of embracing this discovery, your leaders feared it, Chen said softly, having joined them in the chamber. They chose extinction over evolution. A distant rumble shook the facility, sending cascades of dust from the ancient ceiling. Hassan's scanner chirped in alarm. The planet's deterioration is accelerating. These readings suggest we have less than 72 hours before total atmospheric collapse. Can this technology still work? Torres asked, turning to Kira. Could it save your world? Kira's markings pulsed rapidly as she interfaced with the ancient systems. Maybe. The primary restoration grid is intact, just dormant. But reactivating it would require enormous power, more than your ship's quantum core could provide even at full capacity. What about the city's power grid? Rodriguez suggested. If we could channel enough energy from the remaining functional sectors. We'd need to rebuild the conduits, Kira said, running calculations. Recreate the biological interfaces. And even then. She hesitated. The original system was designed to work with evolved beings, ones who could interface directly with the planetary matrix. I don't know if Another tremor, stronger this time, cut her off. Through the ancient windows, they could see the violet sky turning an ominous shade of green as more toxic gases leaked from the planet's dying core. How long would the repairs take? Torres asked. With your help, maybe 48 hours. But Captain, you need to understand, attempting this could destroy your ship's quantum core. You'd be stranded here, on a dying world. Torres looked at her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt. We're already stranded. Might as well do something worthwhile with our time. She smiled grimly. Besides, Earth's always talking about establishing diplomatic relations with new species. Saving an entire planet seems like a good way to start. Kira stared at the humans in wonder. Her own people had abandoned her, deemed her existence too risky to preserve. Yet these aliens were willing to risk everything on the chance of saving a world that wasn't even their own. Why? She asked softly. Why help me? Because it's the right thing to do, Torres replied simply. And because sometimes the people who are left behind are the ones who can see the path forward most clearly. She gestured to the ancient facility around them. Your ancestors understood that evolution isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace. Maybe it's time for both our species to learn that lesson. Before Kira could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Hassan rushed to check his scanner, his face paling at the readings. Multiple ships entering the system, he reported. Heliosian energy signatures. Kira's markings flared with sudden fear. No. They're too early. The evacuation fleet shouldn't return for years. Not the evacuation fleet, Torres said grimly, studying the tactical display. These look like warships. The ancient chamber's crystals pulsed with renewed energy, as if responding to the mounting tension. As Kira watched the approaching ships, she realized they had less time than they'd thought. Her people were returning, not to reclaim their home, but to ensure their abandoned world held no surprises for the colony's pure future. The ancient control room hummed with newfound energy as Kira's fingers flew across the restored interface. Streams of data filled the holographic displays while Captain Torres and her crew worked to integrate their ship's systems with the planetary restoration grid. Primary conduits are accepting power flow, Rodriguez reported from his station. But these readings don't make sense. The energy signature is unlike anything I've seen. Kira's silver markings pulsed with growing intensity as she processed the incoming data. It's quantum harmonics. The ancients found a way to synchronize energy frequencies with the planet's natural resonance. They weren't just terraforming, they were communicating with the world itself. A violent tremor shook the facility, causing loose debris to rain from the ceiling. Dr. Chen's medical scanner chirped in alarm. Atmospheric toxicity is increasing exponentially. The planet's deterioration is accelerating. Multiple ships entering orbit. Patel called out from her communications console. They're Heliosian vessels, at least 5 of them. Torres rushed to Kira's side. Your people have returned. Why now? Kira's expression darkened as she accessed the orbital data. Those aren't evacuation ships. They're part of the genetic preservation fleet. Elite forces tasked with eliminating any threat to Heliosian genetic purity. Her voice turned bitter. They must have detected the power surge from the restoration grid. They're hailing us, Patel announced. Torres nodded. Put them through. A stern Heliosian face materialized on the main display. Unlike Kira's silver-marked skin, his was a pristine blue. This is Commander Vex of the Preservation Fleet. We have detected illegal activation of restricted planetary systems. Cease all operations immediately. Commander, Torres stepped forward. I'm Captain Maya Torres of the Earth Science vessel Horizon. We're attempting to stabilize your world's deteriorating condition. You are interfering with matters beyond your jurisdiction, Vex interrupted. That facility contains forbidden technology. The abomination assisting you is a condemned research subject who should have perished with this dying world. Kira flinched at his words, but kept working. The restoration grid is at 60% power. We need at least 85% to initiate planetary healing. Their ships are entering the atmosphere, Hassan reported from Tactical. Energy weapons charging. Torres's face hardened. Commander Vex, we have no hostile intentions. This technology could save your homeworld. This world was condemned by the Council, Vex replied coldly. Its death was ordained to ensure our species' purity would survive unsullied. You have 10 minutes to surrender the abomination and evacuate the facility. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. The transmission cut off. Torres turned to her crew. Options? The Horizon's weapons are still offline, Rodriguez said. But we've got partial shields. We could try to hold them off. No, Kira interrupted. You need to go. Take your ship and leave while you can. This isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't, Torres shot back. We didn't come this far to abandon you now. Another tremor rocked the facility. Chen's scanner screamed. Surface temperature dropping rapidly. The atmospheric degradation is reaching critical levels. Kira's hands trembled over the controls. The restoration sequence needs another 15 minutes to reach minimum activation threshold. They'll destroy the facility before then. Unless they can't get to it, Rodriguez said suddenly. The ancient shield generators, if we reroute power from non-essential systems dash. We'd only have life support for 20 minutes, Hassan warned. Enough time to finish the sequence, Torres nodded. Do it. As Rodriguez and Hassan rushed to modify the power grid, Kira stared at the humans in disbelief. Why? Why risk everything for a dying world that isn't yours? For someone your people don't even know? Torres placed a hand on Kira's shoulder. Because that's what humanity does. We see someone in need, we help. We find something broken, we try to fix it. And when faced with impossible odds. She smiled grimly. We get creative. Patel's console flashed. Multiple impacts. They're trying to breach the outer shields. Restoration grid at 75%, Rodriguez called out. Rerouting all remaining power now. The facility's lights dimmed as energy was diverted to the shields and restoration systems. Through the ancient windows, they could see Heliosian ships circling like predatory birds, their weapons blazing against the barrier. Core temperature rising, Chen reported. The planet's responding to the restoration field. Kira's markings blazed with silver light as she interfaced directly with the system, her genetic modifications allowing her to process the massive data streams. The harmonics are stabilizing. We need 5 more minutes. They're launching something, Hassan warned. Energy signature suggests mining charges. Torres grabbed a nearby console for support as the facility shook. Can the shields hold? Not against a concentrated blast, Rodriguez said grimly. One direct hit to the power core. Kira looked at the humans who had risked everything to help her save a world that had rejected her. Then she looked at the restoration sequence, so close to completion. In that moment, she made her choice. Captain, she said quietly. I need you to trust me one last time. Before Torres could respond, Kira was already moving. Her silver markings blazed like starfire as she pressed her hands against the ancient control interface. My genetic modifications weren't just about survival, she said, her voice strained. They were about connection. The facility's systems pulsed with new energy as Kira's consciousness merged with the restoration grid. Through the neural link, she could feel every failing system, every deteriorating layer of her dying world. But she could also feel something else, the planet's desperate will to live. What are you doing? Torres demanded, watching in amazement as streams of silver energy began flowing from Kira's body into the control systems. Becoming the conduit, Kira gasped. My enhanced neural pathways, they can channel the quantum harmonics directly. The ancients didn't just build machines, they became one with their world. That's what my research was really about. Rodriguez's eyes widened as he read the emerging data. The restoration field is stabilizing. She's somehow amplifying the effect. Outside, the Heliosian ship's weapons fire suddenly ceased. Through the neural link, Kira could sense their confusion as the planet beneath them began to change. The toxic atmosphere started to clear, revealing patches of violet sky. Deep beneath the surface, ancient systems awakened, responding to her call. Impossible, Commander Vex's voice crackled over the comm. Our sensors indicate planetary restoration at a quantum level. How dash? Because she understood what you forgot, Torres interrupted, her voice full of pride. That evolution isn't about purity, it's about adaptation. About becoming what you need to be to survive. Kira's consciousness expanded further, touching every corner of her world. She could feel the frozen soil beginning to thaw, dormant seeds stirring to life. The planet's core pulsed with renewed energy, its natural rhythms stabilizing after years of decay. Life support failing, Chen warned. 2 minutes of breathable air remaining. Get to the ship, Kira managed through gritted teeth. I have to complete the sequence. We're not leaving you, Torres insisted. You have to. Kira's silver markings were now bright enough to illuminate the entire chamber. What happens next? I don't know if any normal biology can survive it. Please. Let me save my world. Torres looked at her crew, then back at Kira. In that moment, she saw not an alien marked as defective, but a kindred spirit willing to sacrifice everything for a chance at redemption. We'll be monitoring from orbit. Don't you dare die on us. As the humans rushed to evacuate, Kira allowed herself one last smile. Then she surrendered completely to the connection, letting her consciousness merge fully with the planetary systems. Her physical form began to dissolve into pure energy, silver light spreading through the restoration grid like liquid starfire. From the safety of the horizon, Torres and her crew watched in awe as waves of silver energy pulsed across the planet's surface. The toxic atmosphere transformed, molecules rearranging themselves into life-sustaining patterns. Frozen wastelands erupted with new growth as ancient seeds awakened from their long dormancy. The Heliosian ships are retreating, Patel reported. They're sending out emergency signals to the colony fleet. Look. Rodriguez pointed to their scanners. The energy patterns, they're not just restoring the planet. They're becoming part of it. Integrating with every living system. Days later, as the first green shoots broke through the thawing soil, Torres stood in the newly restored ancient facility. The air was clean now, filled with the scent of growing things. But more remarkably, the walls themselves seemed alive, threaded with familiar silver patterns that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. We didn't lose her, Chen said softly, his scanners detecting the complex neural patterns that now permeated the entire planet. She evolved. Became something entirely new. As if in response, the silver patterns brightened briefly. A holographic interface shimmered to life, displaying a message in flowing script. Thank you for helping me find my true purpose. My people wanted to preserve what we were. But sometimes survival means becoming what we were meant to be. The planet lives, and so do I, just differently. Tell those who return that they'll find their home waiting, ready to teach them about real evolution. Torres smiled, touching the living wall gently. We'll tell them. And we'll be back to visit. After all, Earth could learn a lot about planetary harmony from a world that's actually alive. The silver patterns pulsed once more, almost like laughter, as humanity's first ambassador to a newly awakened world began planning for a future no one could have predicted. Sometimes, Torres reflected, the most impossible choices led to the most extraordinary possibilities.